Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining BlueScope's webinar. My name is Clarence and I'm the comms specialist from BlueScope, one of the world's leading producer of coated and pre-painted steel. With us today are Rocky and Soling, who are our technical marketing engineers that championed our product innovations with their extensive knowledge on steel. Can I invite them to join me on screen?
Hi.
Hi.
Morning,
Hi,
Clarence.
Rocky. Hi, Soling. Okay, guys, we have a truly interesting topic for you today. We'll be discussing on whether a higher price tag will lead to better quality and deduce the important implications that affect the quality against the actual value of the product. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any queries throughout the presentation, remember to drop them at BlueScope's online virtual stand, where we will have our experts to address your queries at real time. So without further ado, I'll pass the stage over to our speakers, Rocky and Soling. Enjoy.
Thanks, Clarence, for the wonderful introduction. So, Ling, today we'll be talking about, does a higher price tag mean better quality? Of course, with our industry, we are definitely talking about building material, right? And today, I believe we'll bring our knowledge and background about what we did or have been doing as the technical marketing engineers for BlueScope, where I believe you did a lot of product development, product evaluation, and me with all the site inspections that we have done. So to bring on to this topic and discuss about it. All right. So to start, let me just ask you this question, Soling. Um, for Let's think about it from your point of view. I believe some of our audience would have such a thought as well. Like if you want to renovate your house, right, make it much more beautiful or expand it from a double story to a triple story or even a bungalow. Would you prioritize choosing a material based on just low price tag, or would you just rely on higher price tag building material as an indicator?
Personally, I'll be looking towards the higher price tag in general because I'm not the expert to install those building material by myself, whereby I need to engage the expert to do it for me. So my expectation towards the building material, basically, it will give me a peace of mind. And therefore, I will be looking towards the higher price tag for building materials in general, as it will lead to better product quality in common way. So how about you, Rocky? Which one will you prioritize?
Well, I do believe that higher price tag would naturally lead to an excellent or good quality product. But I think there is I mean, when we talk about quality product, right, there is always a definition to it. So how do you, I mean, for me, I would definitely choose a high price tag, but I'm more interested to know, how do you define a quality product based on your point of view?
Yep. So basically, the way I justify whether the materials of the product qualities by looking at its lifespan. So typically for building materials, I will be looking at at least 5 to 10 years. It will give me a peace of mind, because in the next 5 to 10 years, I have my personal target whereby I may upgrade from my current, for example, like double story terrace house to a bungalow in the futures. So my
Wow.
justification towards it will be basically looking at least 5 to 10 years.
Wow, what a short,
I think
span target, and what a big ambition. Well, oh, we're sure to visit your bungalow soon. Yeah.
yeah.
In my case, my definition of quality product would be slightly different, I would say. So I mean, just to decipher what you just mentioned, is that your definition of quality product is that you would hope for it to last for at least 10 years, without any issue, and giving you a peace of mind. For me, however, I'm looking at a multi-generational house. Maybe I'm more sentimentalist, where I would hope for the same house, it to be repurposed and re-renovated without any of the major architecture stuff being changed um, for the next maybe 20 or 30 years. And yeah, I would ideally hope that all the external say the wall, the roof not be refurbished, not be repainted, and make sure it be staying nice for quite a long time. Yeah. Well, yeah, since on that topic, right? I think it's a good segue for us to go into our first aspects of how do we justify a price tag, right? So it has to do a lot with color. So I often, I actually receive some feedback like from different customers, and sometimes they will say, hey, the color is lighter. Why isn't it cheaper, right? So perhaps you can enlighten us on this issue because it's quite funny. Intuitively, if let's say people do not understand, how color works, then they would just say, oh, lighter colors, supposedly you use less stuff, right? That means it should be cheaper. But what is it really?
Yeah, because the color basically is made up from the paint. And then most often people, they do not know that what are the constituents inside the paint. So basically inside the paint, it comprises of the resin and also the pigments. And we have so many wide range of the pigment and also the resin in the market. So the quality one will be affecting the price tag in general. And the combination of the pigments and also the resin must be both in good qualities.
Yeah.
For example, if you are try to mix the quality resin with the poor pigments, it won't be able to, I would say, maintains the color in terms of the long color durability performance. So the mixture must be the both good quality materials for pigments and also the resin in order to have the better color durability performance.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure we'll share this in the later slides. So let's use that to illustrate further about that. Right. So I understand that like it's what you mentioned, right? Is that for paint itself is made of two major components. So the major part is that determines the color is so-called pigment, and what you can see here is just examples of different pigments. It is made out of different like material, and of course when it is binded together as a paint, so this is how it looks like. So Suning, maybe you can elaborate further on what we are seeing here.
okay, so from the screen itself, it's basically, I would say, it's a very bit of pictorial form of the microscopic view of the paint layer. So the circle is actually representing the different type of the color pigments. We have big and we have small, which is representing different type of the pigment used. And the resin is actually the function of resin is actually to bond or to hold the pigments together so that the color will not fade in the short run. It will be able to maintain its performance in the long run. So resin also play a very important role over here. And in terms
And without
of sorry,
I think without
in
resin, the pigment will become powder on the surface, right? It just blows away.
Yes, because pigments is basically is a powder form. Resin is
Yeah.
actually a liquid form. So we need to mix this together and blend it well so that we have very even colors across the paint. And that's the reason why normally before you do a painting activity, we need to stir the paint first. That's the reason behind.
To disperse the pigment so that it is even. Yeah. Well, so on that note, I think the diagram here is just to help you understand for our audience out there, to help you understand how is a paint made out of. Of course, this is a much more simplified version, and of course, if let's say you really want to have a realistic microscopic view, I'm sure there are experts out there who can do that. So the illustration here is to show that in one color it can be made out of many different pigments, right? Which is the gist of what affects the price tag, right? I mean the color, and of course, talking about pigments, there are many types of pigments out there. I believe on our skin also we have our own color pigment. Different people have different color pigment, right? And of course, for it to be used as a building material, right? So it needs to be, of course, durable, right? So perhaps Solin, you can share with us what we are seeing here, bright pigments, right? What is it, and how is it used or not being used in the building industry?
So the bright movement, as you can see over the screen here, basically the colors itself is more attracting in the way that
Very colorful.
color is it seems like very fresh kind of the color shape itself.
Mm.
So these bright pigments, I would say most often to be produced from the organic pigments. Yeah, when talking about the type of the pigments, generally we have two types, organic and also the inorganic pigments. So for organic pigments, basically, I would say it's a synthesized type the pigments, whereby in terms of the color performance, it will be slightly weaker compared to inorganic pigments, whereby inorganic pigments it only require the sourcings from the nature itself. It doesn't require a lot of the synthesis process. So in terms of the color performance, I would say organic pigment would be slightly weaker, and therefore you will be commonly see all these kind of the bright pigments under the, I would say, in the lower tiers of the material selections, because I think the manufacturer also knows about the performance, whereby most often they will introduce those bright pigments under the lower tiers product range or lower tier segments, whereby
So
in the market we will be seeing these bright colors at a lower price tag in general.
So what you're saying is that despite it being very attractive and also very colorful, I mean, bright pigments are generally made out of organic pigment, which later on for our audience, we will actually illustrate further, just to give you an idea. But in general, what you're saying is that bright pigments tends to fade faster, right? So less durable, put it that way, and hence because of that, it is less valuable. So people ought to pay lower price, or it ought to being cost at the being priced at the lower range compared to it being priced at higher range because of this issue, right? So just now, Celine, you point out a really important comparison of organic and inorganic pigment. So for our audience who's listening in, let me just illustrate a bit about organic or inorganic pigment. So Ling mentioned that organic pigment is something that needs to be synthesized, right? So these are just some examples of pigments that are organic pigment, need not necessarily be used in this industry, but just for your understanding. Okay, so alizarin is actually a type of organic pigment, right? That is derived from the roots of meadows, which is a type of plant, famous or commonly seen in some part of the world or Europe, right? And they actually derive this from their roots and then just refine it further and become powder form. And a bit of science here. Okay, why we call them organic pigment is because of the structure of it. So if let's say the pigment itself contains a so-called carbon chain or so-called carbon compound, then they call them organic pigment, right? In contrast, right, to the organic pigment, right, there is inorganic pigment. Again, with the exception of this kind of inorganic pigment. Just now we are referring to all those bright pigments, right? Inorganic pigment commonly are not so bright one, but this example I'm showing you is actually lead chromic, which is a specific type of inorganic pigment, right? That is toxic, right? Meaning if you use it in your so-called building, right, then it will actually create quite a toxic environment. So perhaps Ling, just with your experience in product development and also sometimes matching to different colors, right? Um, how would you approach if, let's say, people like our audience say after listening to this, they say, oh, I want to build a, say, warehouse that looks that has my corporate color that is yellow, for example, right? The exact yellow that you are showing on the screen. How would you approach it?
Yep. First of all, I will be seeking the pen supplier advice whether
Mhm,
in order to achieve the certain color shade, for example, like
mhm,
the yellow color shade that we can see over the screens, because I did experience it towards the color matching process, and I know that most often for those bright pigments, like to achieve the certain, like the bright yellow color here, it tends to use those toxic pigment in order to achieve the color shade. So
mhm,
I think importantly, we need to always check with the reputable suppliers and get the confirmation from them whether is there any use of these toxic pigments. It
mhm,
is we do not encourage any use of these toxic pigments for
mhm,
any color matching process, because it will be harmful towards the user or the purchaser, whoever who use these materials in the futures. So
mhm,
remember to say no always to any toxic pigments,
mhm.
because
So
I believe the audience also couldn't really justify or comment
understand.
whether
Yeah.
uh, the color does it consist of these toxic pigments or not by looking at the fresh produce panel using our naked eyes. So I would say importantly, always consult your suppliers and get
Yeah.
them to supply you uh, the SDF certificates or etc. So
I
that
think
we have the confirmation on it. Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
in terms of color, right? What you're saying is that it is very hard for us to look at the panel, whatever samples
Mm.
that they receive, and see whether there's any toxicity for this color, right? And what we approach, our approach is that we have made a commitment not to put any of this toxicity on the paint, right?
Mm.
And of course it might not be regulated, right? Because again, for one product brand, it can sometimes this kind of non-standard color, it can be produced on a non-standard basis, right? As what Soling you just mentioned. um,
Mm.
so I think while doing all this process of seeking for new colors for your building, perhaps just ask about whether it contains all this toxicity and make sure that they declare, right?
Mm.
And give you a assurance that there's no such thing. And I think that would actually make your building safer, right? So of course, we just touched about bright pigments that can be organic or inorganic pigment, but most likely it's going to be organic pigment, right? But how about
Mm.
unsaturated colors? Colors that are not so vibrant, like for example, bright red or bright blue, bright yellow. Um, they're more down to earth tone, right? Literally, I'm saying earth tone. Um, so in this case, right, is it exempted from product that does not have organic pigment? Because we know that organic pigment is already
Mm.
not naturally not performing that well.
Yep. I would say this is another good question to be asked, because unsaturated colors, it can be produced using both organic or inorganic pigments, and we
Mm-hmm,
can't really confirm on the color shade itself whether what type of the pigments they are using. So I would say the best way is you try to talk to your suppliers and on your expectations, and since you are knows that the inorganic pigments will be able to last long, try to request on it. try to put your requirement upfront. Talk to your suppliers in order to get the materials that you expect, what you expect.
Yeah. Well, I think yeah, just by looking at just the pigment itself, just by looking at the color, you would not know whether it is inorganic or organic pigment, even for those down to earth tone color, right, or unsaturated color, so to say. Just to show some examples, inorganic pigment, right? I mean, again, it is meant to show different types of pigment that appears the same in the same color, right? So for example, white color, zinc oxide can be a white pigment, right? So it's actually a type of inorganic pigment, right? And there's also another type of inorganic pigment that appears to be white, which also is commonly used, which is titanium dioxide, right? Both appears white, but again, just now we were just comparing between organic and inorganic, right? We know naturally finished product that is with most organic pigment would be priced lower, right? Compared to those that are using inorganic pigment, right? That appears the same. And within inorganic pigment also, there would be a price range, right? Some white pigment can cost significantly lower than the others simply because of the source and also the performance, right? So of course, throughout the years, the paint producers, our R&D has done their research to know that which are the most viable solutions to be used as a final product, right? So I think just now, Sonia, you touched on a really, really important thing, which is R&D, right? So I think you need to rely on, your R&D to actually do all this, right? And make sure that they give you the assurance that, after all that research, that is reliable. You come up with the conclusion. Yeah. So enough with pigment, right? So how about the more liquidy stuff, the resin, right? So in the market, there are actually quite a lot of resins. Again, these are also quite abstract because it all appears transparent. If let's say you look at the raw material itself and then you mix it with paint, the pigment, then it becomes the same color, right? So, maybe you can share a bit about what we are seeing. I mean, we have a few options, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So regarding the resins, like what you can see over the screen over here, basically there are various type of the resin in the market that is available in the market. So I would say generally for the external cladding kind of the applications, polyester and also the PVDF will be the common resin will be used. And there are other types of the resin like epoxy, polyurethane, and also plastisol as well.
Yeah.
But different type of the resin have the different they will be having its pros and cons definitely. So for example, like epoxy, I would say it's a very good type of the resins. However, it is not recommended to be used under the weathering conditions.
You mean
For
under the sun?
Yeah, correct. But for polyurethane, I would say it is a very good type of the resin as well. But in terms of the color selection, it will be quite limited. And most often, these polyurethanes will be used to post painting for the mild steel or any structural materials. I would say a different type of the application in general.
So what essentially you are saying is that out of so many pigments, the one commonly used are polyester based resin and also PDF based resin, and the others it might not be suitable to be used because of our natural weather, which is sunny and hot, and with all this UV right around. So I think that's what it's trying to say, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, on that point, of course, we understand that in the market there is always a common belief, that PDF, they call it paint, lah. I mean, as a final product with PDF resin, PDF paint, generally can perform better. So, is it true? I believe you prepared this picture
Oh,
to
yeah.
elaborate. Yeah.
I would say there are also a wide range of PVDF paint formulation that's available in the
Mm-hmm.
market. And
Mm-hmm.
from my experience, it tells me that at a certain the racing and also the accurate ratio will be able to perform. So
Mm,
the sample that you can see over here is the second sample from the left. That is the
mm-hmm.
optimized versions. So from our study, we found out that
Mm-hmm.
at this optimized version, it will only able to perform in terms of the color durability. For
Mm,
uh, for the rest of the different type of the PVDF formulations, they can it is also known as a PVDF paint. But however, in
mm-hmm.
terms of the color performance, it will be another way around. So I would
Yeah.
say, importantly, try to consult and try to seek your supplier to show you the past proven record
Mm,
to show you that or to build up the confidence level lah, in general.
mm-hmm. Mm. Well,
So I
to the benefit of our audience, I believe what you're trying to say is that um, not all PDF paint will perform the same. Even the one with the right ratio, right? Because I think in the end, just now you mentioned, is that you have to have a good pairing of the pigment and the resin. So it doesn't just have one to work well. So it has to have both, and it requires a lot of R&D, and also rigorous testings in the more realistic way of testing again. To come to a conclusion that this paint can last. And this relies a lot heavily on the background of the experience of the company, right? So
yeah.
on that note, right, on touching on research and the background and all that. So then I would like to pose a challenge to you, because I think most people would make, I mean, for our audience, perhaps, some of you might not be very familiar when choosing colors. Um,
Mm.
uh, I mean, I really don't know. So uh, when you choose a color, right,
Mhm.
for example, this is the challenge. I give you two blues, right? Blue one and blue two. I mean, it appears the same, right? But how do you know which one would last longer if, let's say, I ask you this opinion, right? Would you be able to tell?
Wow, Rocky, this is really a very challenging question to me. I believe it will be same challenging question to all the audience here.
Yeah.
So I can't really comment on which color, for example, like blue one or blue will be able to perform in the long run, because
Mm-hmm.
the performance, the color performance, we need to undergo a lot of texting or the exposure test in order to
Mm-hmm.
check the color performance itself. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't really comment by looking at the fresh produced panel using my naked eyes to
Mm.
uh, to justify whether which one will able to last long.
Mm. Well, so audience, you can see, even our most experts can't even tell blue one or blue two can last long. While the only thing, or the most intuitive thing it can do is ask about, the research background, whether this
Mm.
has been signed off, and whether they have done their extensive studies, right? So if not,
Yeah.
right, then you will see something like this, right? So,
Mm.
Soling, I'm sure we
Yeah.
have seen this study, and it was actually not an intended study. So perhaps you can share a bit of
Mm.
background about this
Oh, yeah.
building and what we saw, what we are seeing.
Mm. So this, I would say this study is come in whenever we receive some feedback from the market. They are saying that, uh, your material is actually showing the color change within 5 years time.
Mhm,
So we
mhm,
went over to do the inspections, and then we found out that actually this is a mix of materials,
mhm.
whereby they are mixing the other materials onto the same
Yeah,
buildings, and then
yeah.
like the samples or like the panels that you are seeing on the screen here, on the sandwich
Mhm,
socket all over the centers, is basically the other materials. initially it is the same color shade, like what you can see over the screen here. Those lapping area, they are not really exposed to the sunlight, whereby we still manage to keep the original color. So from here, you
Yeah.
can, on the bottom on the left and on the right, from the lapping area, you are able to see that the initial color, it seems like very close to each other. However, for those exposed area, which I would say
Exposed under the sun
pink,
again.
the pink area,
Mhm.
it doesn't really have the similar color performance within 5 years time.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I also mentioned just now, we can't really comment whether the colors will be able to perform by looking at the fresh produced panel using our naked eyes. It requires the testing or exposure test for us to know that how good the color performance is.
Yeah. Well, if let's say I put a challenge to you, right? Both initially that looks the same, right? Looks blue, and I say, I dare to say the one on the right tend to be cheaper. The one on the left should be more expensive. I mean, based on what we just discussed, intuitively, the one on the right should be cheaper, right? Otherwise, why would people, choose it over the one on the left? But of course, I'm sure audience also has this dilemma. Our audience, that there's always a constant balance between price tag and also how it performs. So of course, in the market, there are all sorts of assurance that a manufacturer can give you, right? Manufacturer A, manufacturer B give you two different things, and then you just compare with the price and all that. How, okay, would you choose, I mean, for me, I know personally both, the one on the left, even on the right, I wouldn't choose at all, because my expectation, again, if let's say, I was to build a multi-generational house, is that I at least want it to, not have any signs of change or even colors, right? For at least 10, 20 years. So even the one on the left seems a bit off for me, but how about you?
Personally, I will I the one on the left is still within my acceptable range, I would say, because it will still carry the blue color shade itself. But the panel on the right, I can't really accept it, but because the colors does change really a lot, and this is
Yeah, it
only
did.
within 5 years time.
Yeah. So this is the dilemma, right? So if you think, I mean, our audience, if you think that you can accept the one on the right, with the low price tag, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But most often people are deceived to believe that it can last as long as the one on the left, and end up they are heartbroken because they had to spend more money on painting over. Those are the costs that are not accounted for when you are buying early on. And of course, to further elaborate that, let me just share another case that we have encountered before, right? So, Sunil, you're seeing actually a picture, right, of a commercial. This is shop lots, and there are actually two shades of roof over here, one in beige and one in green. And to I mean, maybe you're surprised, maybe you're not, audience, but the one in the center that appears beige, it was originally green, right? And 8 years ago, and after 8 years, the green totally disappear, and then you get this beige color. And again, it was only after 8 years, and for me, I really cannot accept it. I'm not sure our audience, how would you feel? Would you resonate with my feeling, or would you feel otherwise? But I think the message here is that there ought to be a different price tag, and of course, often the dilemma that you have to choose. But without all the informations that you can get, like what Soling you mentioned, right? Conscious decision, right? The reputable suppliers information. So you need to have all this information and take all the warnings before you decide what to buy, because once you put it on, it's very hard for you to replace it, in the short run. And I'm sure the owners would, by the stroke of luck, who chose the site compared to the center, would feel really really lucky.
Yeah,
Or
Rocky.
the other way
The
around. Yeah.
building over the site is actually installed or completed around the same year with the central buildings.
Yeah. In fact, this is a common practice, right, in Malaysia. I'm not sure whether any part of the world, but I'm sure our audience have experienced this also. But let me just explain. So, in a project, normally they'll break up the contract and they'll you know break up the contract and then let different contractors to build the whole development. And most often, different contractors, they would opt for different you know material simply because of how much they want to earn, right? So again, it's a dilemma by contractors, right?
Yeah.
Contractor one and contractor two. So contractor one might want to earn more compared to contractor two, so they would choose alternatives and whatnot. So of course, if let's say the alternatives tend on paper to justify whatever specs that architects gave, then there's no good reason to reject, right? But most often those things on the paper are just it might be unreliable, right? So that's why I think your emphasis is right on, is that it is spot on, is that the emphasis on reputable supplier, it is very very important, because I mean, how do you even define it, right? Reputable, right? So you, I mean, individually you need to ask the questions, right? What kind of testing have you done, and is it realistic tests, right? And later on we'll also dive in deeper on that. Anyway, so yeah, same building, and of course I'm sure we have seen also some successful stories, and this is one of them. So then maybe you can elaborate further on this one.
Yeah. So basically for this project is one of the projects in Sabah, whereby the lower roof, which is highlighted in yellow over here, is basically installed in the years 1997. And the upper roof is actually installed 10 years apart.
Yeah.
And when we went back to do some study on it, and we fly out the drones and take some photo shootings over there, and then basically it's in the year 2016, which is approximately 9 years old for the upper roof and 19 years for lower roof. And it's just surprising me because I can't really see a very significant color difference between the upper roof and also the lower roof, even though they are installed 10 years
10 years
apart.
apart. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
really surprising me. I believe the building owner does do the thorough checking with the suppliers on maybe they give their expectation upfront towards the reputable suppliers on it. And hence they are getting this I would say is quite amazing kind of the result. And also the
Well, it could be
performance in
that.
thermal color. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be that, or it could be luck, right? Basically, they have more money to spend, and then they just so happen to buy a good product. I mean, it can happen, right? The good luck,
Yeah.
right? So on a closer look, this is how it looks like compared to an original color. So the color name itself is called aquamarine, and I mean, if you compare it closely, of course, you can nitpick on the picture. There are some dust and all that. I mean, it's building, right? It happens. So, but the essence here is that again, come back to color, right? The color itself does not change a lot after 9 and 19 years apart, right? From where the photo was taken. So that gives you, I would say for me, this is a money worth me buying for this product. And of course, we have seen also all sorts of other studies. So this one is actually taken in South Africa, where again the photo was taken in 2009 and 2020, and 10 years apart. So this is how it looks like. Of course, we have a close-up look comparing to the original color. So if you see on the left, on the wall cladding, this is how the color appears, original color compared to the one that is exposed for 10 years, meaning exposed under those severe conditions like sunlight, rain, and what have you over there. Right.
Yeah, if I'm the building
So,
owner, I'll be
yeah.
very happy on this color performance. After 10 years, it's very limited color difference comparing to its originals.
Yeah. So for our audience, so you need to have a conscious decision making with all this taking in place when you're considering the price tag, because the price tag alone does not tell you a lot by itself, because again we open when we started, we know that intuitively a higher price tag would naturally mean better quality, but again these are the questions that you need to ask to weed out those that just purely a higher price tag, but does it really deliver? That is a question that we need to ask. And coming back to the color, right? It has two components, like what Solin you mentioned. It's the resin component and also the pigment component. And if let's say you are unlucky and you don't know what question to ask, then this is what you get, right? So the question that you should ask, are those that we just discussed earlier. And this aside from the color, right? The color performance, sorry. Is there any other more serious questions to be asked, for a product with different price tag? Because I know that you for yourself, you want a peace of mind, right? And color addresses the emotional, or rather the social part, where the building looks nice, people feel nice, coming to a nice house, but functionally, right? Does it? Is there any other aspects of the product that we should consider?
Yep. So if we are looking forward to the external claddings, most often another questions will be asked by the public would be the corrosion resistant performance. For example, like how good these materials can perform in terms of corrosion resistant performance comparing to another type of the materials. This, I would say, this will be quite a general, quite typical question to be asked. I believe the audience today will also comes to their mind of this in terms of functionalities aspect. They were looking forward to the roof leakages, and most often the roof leakages will be due to the corrosion performance. Yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is not looking forward to the roof leakages, right?
Yeah.
I do agree with you on this part on roof leakages, because I think when it comes to roof leakage, right, people don't really care about corrosion. Really, they care about whether the roof leak or not. And it is only if, let's say, the roof starts corroding, like what you can see on this picture, to the point where the roof no longer can provide such shielding, then it starts leaking. Then it'll be just too late. All right. Later we'll share some of our insights and also some reasoning. But I think most often you only feel the impact, right, functionally, when the roof starts leaking. But if let's say the root cause is that it is corroded, then you have to ask the questions early on. Why didn't you choose the one that can last long, right? Perhaps it was just a bit slightly more expensive, right? So you need to ask the questions, and also before you choose the lower price tag one, which all of us, right? I'm sure I do the same, right? I choose cheaper price product, if let's say there's no good justification, but I need to ask the right questions before I make that decision, right? Yeah. So Ling, I believe the next question that our audience would want to know is, what is the root cause of corrosion then? Since corrosion leads to roof leakage.
Yeah, I would say the corrosion resistant performance is highly depending on type of the coating or type of the galvanic coating that you put it on top of the steel surface, because it will affect the corrosion resistant performance. So generally, there are two types of the galvanic coatings that is available in Malaysia market. There are type AZ and also the type Z. So the main differentiation between these two types of the galvanic coating would be the component itself. For type AZ, it's actually mixture of aluminum and zinc, and then for the type Z is approximately 100% of zinc coating on the galvanic coating itself. Yeah.
So
how do
what
we
would be the
define
different?
define the performance in terms of corrosion resistant performance? I believe the audience here, you might not really know how exactly it works. So let me teach you a very straightforward way. Try to ask your suppliers to give you or to show you the proven record. The proven record that I mean is actually the actual weathering application test. Like what you can see here is actually the exposure test, whereby they are exposing different type of the materials for the marine environment, for example. And then they can show you the proven record, the actual performance on leaks, rather than those accelerated corrosion tests, which normally we conducted using the lab test. I would say those accelerated corrosion tests it is conducted under the control or conditions. It cannot really representing the actual environments. So
Well,
I
I
would
think
say
there's a danger. Yeah, there's a danger in using lab tests, also called your accelerated weathering test, to represent how it performs in actual weather. Yeah, and of course, for this kind of weathering test, just now, so you rightly mentioned, it should be prioritized, and most often people like to mumble the word salt spray test, right?
Yeah.
And I think salt spray test has a huge difference compared to outdoor weathering tests. Of course, the advantage of salt spray test or so-called accelerated weathering test is the word accelerated, meaning you use less time to get the result. But a more important question to be asked is whether the result really represents its realistic usage, its realistic function. So even based on the salt spray test standards, right, the standards that are developed to carry out the test itself, it has put out a warning that it says you cannot correlate this test to how it performs in actual weather. It's merely a test to induce corrosion without any form of realisticity to how it can perform in actual, tropical weather, for example, or even near the coastal region. So, and we have seen a lot of these examples, done that compares those and then say that it is not relevant, right? So, of course, to elaborate how the impact would be is coming back to this photo that we showed earlier. So just like I mentioned, it is faded, right? I mean, that is the emotional, also called the social part of it. People look like your roof doesn't look nice, right? Your building doesn't look nice because it's faded. But we actually went back after 15 years, right, for the same building, and this is what happened. And what you can see here is that now the center part of it is just totally corroded, right? I mean, some of it they just replaced, and some of it is just left to corrode and have the roof leaking, right? And in fact, I actually met one of the architect who was refurbishing the corner lot here, and the architect told me that the replacement or the so-called refurbishment does not just happen on the roof or the roofing material itself. It happens also on the components that is underneath, for example, the structure, the foil or what have you, right? Simply because those components underneath are not meant to be in that situation, meaning exposed to rainwater and all that. So you end up excuse me. So you end up with very so-called costly maintenance, right? That was not considered at the initial stage when you are buying the product. So and this is when people are comparing between lower price tag and a higher price tag, and then lower price tag. Okay, what is the justification? Is it based on realistic tests? Like Soling just now you mentioned, right? It's not. So it's based maybe it's based on source play test, and I will just maybe better, or it's good for you. But if you don't know better, then now is the time to ask the right question. Whether you have realistic performance tests, or would you have source play tests, which is also realistic, right? If you use that to say that, okay, let me justify why you should use this in your building, right? Then it's just not working. Yeah, it will end up spending more. Yeah, compared to
and some more for the project that you're showing here is basically located in under the benign environment, whereby
not
we shouldn't
yeah
to have
urban
this
area.
kind of the performance in terms of corrosion, the red rusting corrosion to be happen.
Yeah. So to our surprise also, we found out that because the contract was written, and we actually traced back, and it was required that the contractor offered a material that has the same the warranty of 25 years, right? Without any sort of rusting and all that. So it would be so bad, because now it's only 15 years, right? That when we took this photo, and the roof's completely rusted. So that is the impact, right? And often that is another influencing factor, for people to make decision. Same warranty, right? So supplier, again, reputable, depending on how you define it, right? Would have a test that justifies, why this warranty is being offered. I mean, for building material, that's how it is, and of course, the justification has to be based on realistic tests. But then there are bad actors out there that offer warranty purely because supplier competitor A offer the same thing. So why not, right? So offering it without basing it on the realistic test. So end up this happened. So what can you do, right? So this a really realistic problem that happens rampantly in our in our society and in our industry. So yeah, so this is something that you need to take note of, right? So Ling, let me share ask you another question. Perhaps you can share more. So you mentioned this is in a benign, meaning much more urban environment. How about if the building is somewhere near a coastline? Because we are, I mean, Peninsula and Borneo side, right? Towns are mostly coastal, right? And there are coastal regions where some of the industries are located in. So what would be the difference between coastal and also those benign areas?
Depending on the locations, like the buildings that is going to build near to the coastline, and then it will be more crucial in terms of the material selections, whereby we need to look for the higher coating class. For example, like AZEC 200, which is the highest coating class for type AZEC in the market. The reason being why we need to look for the higher coating class because under this environment, it will be exposing towards the so-called corrosive substances like the salt particles. And typically, I will be experiencing some of the metal components corrosions they are showing the red rusting corrosions near the coastline. Like what you can see over here is basically it's a structure door. If you are choosing not the right materials, and then it tends to give you this kind of the result after 1 or 2 years or even 3 years. So I would say in terms of material selection, it will be very crucial depending on the occasion itself.
Yeah, as I understand it, you actually did recently, I mean not recently, before the pandemic, you did a study on this visit on this project. So perhaps you can share with our audience what you saw and what you learned from this visit.
Sure. This building is actually the retail buildings. This is located very close to the coastline.
Like shop
It is
lot.
approximately, it's a retail store basically. it is located approximately 20 meters away only from the coastline. And then when we went back to do the visit, it's actually approximately 10 years, which is last year, before the pandemic come. So from my observation during the visit was, or the key takeaway, I would say, the material selections would be very crucial for this kind of environments, whereby from this image itself, you tend to see some of the metal components, like the handrails, the shutter grills, that what you can see over here, is start to show the sign of the corrosions after 10 years under this environment. But however, the roofing material itself is still performance as its original. We do not really see a very significant kind of the color difference as well as a performance difference compared to its originals. And this is one of the photos that I would like to share with the audience today as well, because this is very close to the coastline, whereby the seawater able to push out and then to erode the concrete, and then the BRC for the flooring is start to expose, and it also showing the sign of the red rusting corrosions afterwards. I think I have another buildings to share. Which
your mic is rubbing your shirt.
Okay.
Your mic is rubbing your shirt. Yeah. Well, yeah. You were saying
this is another retail store. Yeah. So I would say it's a similar observations or similar learnings from this visit.
Yeah.
So importantly, have to look for have to consult with the reputable supplier in terms of material selections.
Yeah. So from here, what you can see is that before, when it's just completed, and after 10 years in a coastal region. So this is a proven record, right? This is something you can ask for from the supplier, right? So of course, if let's say your building is much more prominent and different types of products, then you can also ask for whether that product itself has been used successfully in that environment. So one of the examples also, another example is this building in Langkawi. So it was completed, it was an extension of the existing building back in 2005, and it was completed. Another photo was taken in 2020, right? And what you can see from here is that there was no changes to how it performs and whatnot. So another photo, right? And all these are what we call proven records, case studies that are supposed to happen and supposed to be used compared to those lab tests, like salt spray tests. Again, not reliable, right? So I think when it comes to price tag and also decision making, right, on which product to buy, higher price tag, yes, it will make sense, but you need to ask these questions, right? And also don't be swayed by those paper things, like on the paper thing like warranty, right? Because in the end, we have bad actors out there, and you might be making a big decision based on that paper, that number itself. It's not realistic, right? So to come to an end, of course there's some nice photos, and this is also another studies that we have recently done. And so Ling, I'm sure you have stayed in this chalet before, and what was your view, and what was your observation of this, and to have a overall view? So this building itself was installed 5 years after, the photo was taken 5 years after the building was completed. So what was your thought or observation when you were seeing that?
First of all, I would say I was really inspiring on this building design, because the chalet just above the sea levels. And after 5 years, when I went back to have a stay over there, and I would say it's really inspiring me for another round, because I would say I do not I would say the material itself is still performed as its original. I can't
Mhm.
really see there's a very significant difference by
Mhm.
comparing the original photos, which is taken in year 2014, versus
Mhm.
the photo taken in last year, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do believe that the building owner or the business owner, they might
Mhm.
did a very good study and did does really consult the material supplier in terms of material
Mhm.
selection, and the business owner did the right choice to choose the right materials for this kind of the environments. I would say this environment is even crucial compared to the previous
Yeah.
projects that we showed just now.
Yeah. I'm sure the developer or so-called the owner of this operation uh, actually did consult us and also extensively have a discussion, and that's what we are aiming for, right, for our audience, right, to have a productive discussion on what you need to achieve. And of course we have architects to serve as a platform to do that. So to conclude today's uh, discussion, so then I would like to bring out a quote from the great Benjamin Franklin, right? The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. So what this represents is that, when you are looking at the price tag, or so-called warranty, it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Those are things that are easily influencing your decision making. But what you need to do is drill down, go underneath, dive in, right, to look at what the other part of the iceberg is, right? So those questions are, things that do not involve in the initial price tag, like labor costs, cost of repairment and opportunity cost. Where, just now we elaborated for a cladding material. If let's say, the color, you prioritize on the color, make sure you ask the right questions, as the examples that we have shown earlier. And if let's say you prioritize on the functionality part of the cladding, ask those questions, not source free test, of course, right? Not warranty, of course, right? Not just warranty, right? So ask the important questions whether they have those case studies, right?
Yeah.
So of course, the end result of all this is that, you should not just look at the initial price tag. And to conclude it in a much more shorter way is, you should prioritize on the cost of ownership,
ownership.
because the cost of ownership itself covers, how long the building lasts, and do you really need maintenance? Do you really need repairment? And those kind of things, right? So of course, with that, I would like to bring this session to an end. And of course, for our audience today, thanks for joining us. And if you feel satisfied and if you're happy with our sessions and our discussion and you learn something new, then we encourage you to fill out this survey form, so it can help us build our content in the future much better. And of course, we have the architects going on this year or virtually. So feel free to visit our booth, right, and also our exhibition stand, right, which we will have more interactions, right. If you have a project in hand, feel free to go there, and we will answer your questions, right. With that, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.